In our For Your Family segment this morning, should teenagers who are caught sexting be charged with possession of child pornography and be required to register as sex offenders? It could happen to two middle school students in Indiana. Their charges are now pending. It is a serious question many states are trying to address right now, how to deal with legally this growing practice of kids sending nude photos to each other via cell phone. And joining us this morning to answer some of those questions for us is legal expert Thomas Glasgow. He's done a lot of research for us in this area because there is so much. Different states are dealing with it differently, right?
They are. Most states currently are dealing with sexting the same way that you would deal with a child pornographer. The possession or dissemination of this stuff is the same as possessing or disseminating child pornography. The problem is, instead of dealing with someone who's a predator, you're dealing with someone who is innocent and may not have their brain formed to the full portion of where it should be in their 20s, so they're making decisions now that can affect their life very profoundly later on.
And I think a lot of kids just have no clue how serious this can be. What is, I mentioned the Indiana case. What's the latest with those kids who were caught sending nude photos in school?
They essentially were sending nude photos back and forth, a 13-year-old boy, 12-year-old girl. The girl's phone went off in class, and the teacher confiscated it. She started crying. What occurred was they found the pictures on her cell phone, and they ended up then taking both of them into custody, referred it to the juvenile authorities in Indiana to decide whether or not they were going to prosecute them for what essentially is child pornography in Indiana.
Now, how is that handled here in Illinois? What does our law say?
Right now, our law says that if you possess or disseminate these sort of things, you can be prosecuted as either an adult, you can be prosecuted as a child under the juvenile statutes. If you're prosecuted as an adult, you can face time up to 30 years in the penitentiary. It can be a Class X felony depending on the type and number of and the age of the victim. Whereas with juveniles, it can be, prosecuted as a juvenile crime, and then they still have to register as sex offenders. They can have that expunged based upon whether or not felony, misdemeanor, 5 years, 2 years, depending on where they fall, but they're in the same lot as someone who has had a huge organization and has disseminated hundreds of thousands of these photographs as opposed to just sending a text to a girlfriend or a boyfriend.
I also want to show everybody, because Thomas has done the research for us, what other states are doing with sexting. For example, in Arizona, sexting could qualify as sexual exploitation of a minor. Vermont, Ohio, Utah, they passed legislation making sexting a misdemeanor. And in 8 other states, teenagers are being prosecuted. Do you know of a case where teens had to register as sex offenders?
Yes, there have been those cases across the United States. There is a push here in Illinois with a bill sponsored by one of the Naperville representatives to separate sexting from child pornography. And it is to be a misdemeanor if you request a sext or receive a sext, and it varies between a Class A and a Class B, a year in jail or 188 days in jail. This is backed by members of the Naperville Police Department who have also been called to testify in this matter. They don't want to make these people who essentially are victims and not smart enough to decide what these long-term ramifications will be, make them the predators and have the stigma, that big scarlet letter that they will wear for the rest of their life. They don't want to do that to them.
So that's pending legislation.
It's pending legislation.
In the meantime, though, I guess it's so important for parents to talk to their kids about sexting and how the serious consequences that it carries.
Video can last a long time, and it is dangerous to make those decisions now as a child that can affect you as an adult.
Thank you, Thomas, for coming in this morning for that information. And that is our look at For Your Family this morning. We'll be back with a look at weather and traffic after this.